Bienvenidos, buenos días desde Colombia, buenas noches para la India. Welcome everybody. Good morning for Colombia, good evening for India. Hoy tenemos una invitada muy especial, nos acompaña REKHA, coach MCC, que nos va a orientar sobre un tema muy poderoso, que es el tema de la supervisión en coaching. ¿De qué vamos a estar hablando hoy? Precisamente la supervisión nos ayuda, nos acompaña a explorar como coach. Si nos hemos sentido emocionalmente agotados después de un número de sesiones de coaching, ¿has tenido alguna vez preguntas sobre consideraciones éticas o has tenido dilemas éticos durante tus sesiones de coaching? Más allá de afinar las competencias de coaching, ¿te has preguntado cómo podrías expandirte y crecer como coach? ¿Has sentido la necesidad de ampliar el alcance y el impacto de tu coaching más allá de tu cliente para incluir a tus intereses y sus ecosistemas más grandes? Este es un espacio para nosotros los coaches. This is a space, a safe space for us as coaches, as professional coaches, to solve our concerns about our coaching processes. Y ahora lo voy a dejar con Santiago Barragán. Santiago Barragán es el director de educación para ICF Colombia y responsable de tener esta belleza de invitada el día de hoy. Santiago Barragán is our director of education for ICF Colombia and responsible to have this beautiful guest today. So Santiago, please let us know who is REKHA.
Gracias, Betsy. Vamos a comenzar. Just one second. Ok. Para los participantes en español, ¿quién es REKHA y por qué estamos hablando de supervisión en el día de hoy? Antes de empezar, solo quiero recordar a nuestras personas en Colombia que esta conferencia va a tener una traducción en tiempo real con Microsoft Translator. Enseguida vamos a poner el código por el chat y van a poder introducir en el link para tener la traducción en tiempo real. Voy a contarles un poquito de REKHA. REKHA viene con 35 años de experiencia en muchos sectores, como jefe de negocios, como emprendedora, jefe de recursos humanos y en Académico. Ha pasado más de 20 años en funciones de liderazgo de alto nivel, incluyendo como socio de una empresa, de una startup de software. Durante este tiempo y como coach de tiempo completo, ha entrenado y desarrollado más de 100 líderes hacia sus metas empresariales, profesionales y personales. Ella es supervisora de coaches, certificada, que trabaja con coaches de diferentes partes del mundo. Su enfoque es trabajar con coaches en un formato 1-a-1, aunque también supervisa grupos. Es una entrenadora acreditada del equipo de coaches del EMCC, Consejo Europeo de Mentoring y Coaching, y ella es una entrenadora de coaches también, no solo de supervisores, sino también es mentora, habiendo entrenado y hecho mentoring cerca de 100 coaches hacia sus credenciales de ICF. Ella cree en traer todo de sí misma en su práctica de coaching y de supervisión, y es la integración de la sabiduría que ha reunido a través de sus experiencias como coach, coach de coaches, coach de organizaciones y de líderes en diferentes industrias, lo que la ha llevado a traer clientes y a hacer coach para los que quieren aprender de sus experiencias y sus habilidades. Lo que los clientes de supervisión aprecian es el espacio que ella les comparte, un enfoque de aprendizaje sin apego a los resultados, con completa vulnerabilidad y poder de silencio atento. REKHA, what a pleasure to have you here. We'll have many people joining in the next couple of minutes, but I don't want to delay any more the beginning of your talk. Feel free to jump on it.
All that sounded so sweet that I now want to learn Spanish for sure. So, hola and hello and namaste, everybody. I'm so happy to be here and I'm so happy to be sharing with you all today about something which is very, very close to my heart, and that is coach supervision. And you as a coach, what does it mean for you? So in the next hour or so, I'm going to talk about what is coach supervision, coaching supervision, what does it mean, how it can benefit you, and how does it actually work. And just to let you know, I'm going to be in between restarting the translator because there seems to be some problem and it keeps going off. So for those of you who need the translator from English to Spanish, please bear with me while I'm
Can you please
transitioning.
write down the code again in the chat?
Santi, something you said?
Can you please write the code of the room of the translation of the translator?
Oh, yeah, there is a different code now. Just a minute. There you go. I think that won't be visible to people who are coming in newly.
I'll keep putting it as people join in. No worries.
Sure. So that's what we are going to do for the next few minutes. And what I want to do is I want to start by sharing my screen, of course. So I'm going to start by telling you a little story about how this journey began for me. Many years ago, when I started my PCC training journey, and as I was going through it and as I started coaching, I somehow felt that there was something missing. Just to give you a little background, before I came into training to be a coach, I had actually gone through a lot of counseling and therapy as a recipient. And I knew that, people who do counseling and who are therapists have access to supervision. And somewhere I thought that, where do coaches take their issues and their problems and how do they de-stress themselves and how do they, get themselves together when they don't have anybody to go to? So there was that missing piece that I had experienced right then. And then few years later, I came across supervision and I thought, wow, so it's there. And I'm so glad that it's there. I never thought I'm going to get into becoming a supervisor, but then that happened because I thought that was a natural progression from contributing to clients to contributing to coaches who are serving clients. So for me, that was a progression. So that was my journey. Now, all of you may be anywhere on this spectrum of, I don't know anything about supervision to, oh, I have experienced supervision and I know what it is all about. Wherever you are on the spectrum, I hope that, by the end of the session, you would have taken something of value for yourself and some little bit of add on to what you already have. So that's my hope and prayer for this session. Beginning with, perhaps, what actually is coaching supervision. So if you look at what is coaching supervision, and if you look at the ICF definition of coaching, I know it's a mouthful, but if you just focus on the highlighted words, and those are the key words when you come to supervision. So basically, it is the coach and the supervisor sitting together, engaged in a dialogue which is reflective in nature. A dialogue that is for collaborative learning, where the coach learns, the supervisor learns, and then the coach learns something which they put in practice with their clients, and then the clients benefit and the client's ecosystem benefits. So if you see, coaching supervision is a very comprehensive methodology that not only includes the coach, but also includes the clients the coach is serving and the ecosystem or who the clients serve. So it has a kind of a cascading positive impact on everything around the client. So that is how ICF defines coaching supervision. Through my journey to become a coach supervisor, I kind of formulated for myself what coaching supervision means for me. And that's what I'm sharing with you here below. That for me, coaching supervision is, first of all, it's about partnering. It's about partnering in a reflective space of learning, such that the coach's clients and the client's ecosystems are all positively impacted. So this is what coaching supervision is for me. And this is what I believe that I practice when I'm supervising coaches. So what is it then that the coach brings to the table for the supervisor to have a dialogue on? If you look at it, there are concerns, there are challenges, there are surprises, there are questions, insights, and very nicely and beautifully, even success stories. So a coach also brings in success stories which then are celebrated and which then are cemented and then which the coach builds on beyond what they have already experienced as a success. I find that piece very beautiful because that is the only piece which is not about problems, it's not about solutions, it's not about answering questions and so on. But it is like, it's about, I already have this and how can I build more on top of this? So what are the kind of concerns that a coach might bring to supervision? Concerns about progress. Am I making progress? Is my client making progress? Is my client getting value? Am I providing value? How am I affected emotionally? Is my client dumping emotions on me and I don't know how to handle them? So these are the kind of concerns that the coach will have, which then they bring to supervision. Let's look at challenges. Challenges could be like, how do I deal with different types of clients? How do I engage with clients who are so different from me, when our value systems don't match, when our beliefs don't match, and when I find myself not at all aligned with this client, how do I still hold myself and how do I go beyond my barriers, beyond my biases? How do I also, deal with challenges like, oh, I know the solution for my client, and if I provide this solution, my client is going to get tremendously benefited. Let me share it with my client, let me give my client more options. Or my client is asking me for help in terms of giving me answers. How do I not give answers and how do I elicit them from the client? So this is some kind of challenges that the coach is coming with. Then of course you have questions. You have questions about, about yourself. Am I good enough? Am I providing value? Am I doing something right? Do I have the capability? Am I even a coach? All kinds of questions that come up. Then you have insights that you want to share with your supervisor. Insights about, I figured out, that this is the kind of bias I have. And I realized that, oh, this is what is coming in the way. Or I have insights about barriers that I'm having as a coach. Or I have insights about what I'm doing with my client, which is not in service of the client, and how I'm actually discounting my client and so on. So these are insights that you have had outside the supervision session, which you want to bring into the supervision session to inquire more into it, to get more information about it, so that new possibilities open up for you, so that you see how these barriers or how these biases might be showing up in other situations also, which you have not seen before. So these are the kind of insights that you bring to share. And then of course you bring success stories to share, right? Oh, I never knew I could handle this. Oh, I never thought that, if this was possible for me. Those are success stories. And then surprises. You might get surprises to your supervisor saying, this client shared something about themselves and that shook me. And that it has shaken me in a session when I thought I was being all present and all non-judgmental and, holding space and so on, is a surprise to me, because I thought that I had it. I thought that I was there in terms of all these things. So how come this has happened to me? Or I didn't think that I would feel this way, but I have felt this way. I didn't think that, my client said something and that brought in anger for me. And I didn't feel that I would get angry. How come anger came up for me? How come frustration came up for me? Or sometimes a coach is so scared to even acknowledge to themselves, that, what, in this session, the client was so boring. I was so bored listening to this client story. This client went on and on and on and on and wouldn't stop. And it was so difficult for me to sit there trying to hold the space and be this non-judgmental, but I was not being non-judgmental. I was bored. And this is a space that you get in supervision where you can freely share emotions which you feel you should not be feeling when you are in a coaching situation. So that is what you bring to supervision, what coaches can commonly bring to supervision. So how do you address all of these concerns and challenges and surprises and successes, insights, etc.? How does a supervisor do it? It's basically through, if you look at it, there are three functions of supervision broadly. So you have the formative function, you have the normative function, and you have the restorative function. And across all these functions of supervision are all the, whatever the coach brings to the table in terms of concerns or challenges or questions or insights, etc. All of them get addressed through these three functions of supervision. Let's look at what they are. I have not put them in any particular order, actually, but interestingly, when I put this deck together, I realized, oh, I have put restorative function first. And then I realized why, because it is, to me personally, it's an extremely important function of supervision. So the restorative space is for you to get back your energy, to become recharged, to become revitalized, and to go back into your coaching space with your energy restored. So what has taken away your energy? Let me share a couple of stories over here, one from my life and how it benefited me, how this space benefited me as a coach. So this is about a client who was engaged with me for a specific number of sessions. And we were halfway into our journey. And then suddenly this client dropped off. It had never happened to me before. So for me, first of all, that was a shocker. How can the client drop off without intimation, without any prior notice, without any indication to me that, hello, this is not working for me, therefore I want to drop off. On top of that, this is a corporate client. So then I'm worried that, if this client has dropped off, what might it mean in terms of my engagement with this organization? Am I going to get further work from this place or not? So I went through a lot of emotions for quite some period of time, actually, surprisingly. There was anger, there was frustration, there was irritation. First, the anger was on my client, then it became directed towards me, saying, how are you taking this and how are you allowing this to happen? And what does it mean for you as a coach? Are you not even a good enough coach? What's the point in being MCC? All kinds of things, So then it went on for such a long time that I said, my goodness, I have to close this chapter. And if I'm not able to do it on my own, let me take it to supervision. And in supervision, then I actually spoke about it. I gave voice to my anger. I gave voice to all the emotions and all the thoughts that had come up for me, which were so disempowering. And I just let it out. And then I got some insights after I was not clouded by all those emotions. I actually got some insights and I actually let it all go. And I closed the chapter saying, it's not about me, it's about my client. My client chose not to communicate with me about closure. That's my client's choice, and it doesn't mean anything. But me not putting a closure to that, I had not understood and I had not realized how it was impacting my other relationships with my other clients, because they made me suspicious, they made me cautious, they made me be in ways which I'm normally not. And that was not good, because that's not bringing my best self in service of my client. So that is how I used this space. Another story is of my supervisee. So my supervisee came into the session saying, this is what I need from my session today. I want to be able to figure out how to deal with my emotions, and I want to be able to let them go. And then, of course, we looked at what is the case, and we looked at what were the emotions and why they had come, and etc., etc. But at the end of the session, the client was restored. The client had gone away recharged with energy. So this is an extremely important function of supervision. And if you really, really use it, it can be extremely powerful. But what needs to happen for people to use this function is people need to be comfortable with the supervisor. People need to trust the process. People need to know that this is a safe space and I can open up and share my emotions, and that will not make me look like a bad coach or a bad person in this space. And having that space itself can be extremely powerful. Let's look at the normative function. Normative function is very interesting and very important because this is where ethical considerations are, highlighted. Now, two ways this happens. One is you yourself have faced some ethical dilemma in your coaching practice and are wondering what to do about it, how to resolve it, the dilemma. So you bring it to supervision. Another is even more beautiful because that is something you have not even noticed, but that's like some potential ethical violation that might be happening, which you have not even figured out. So one such case came up in supervision where the supervisee brought in a coaching situation where the coach was coaching team members of a particular team. This team was reporting into somewhere far away, into a factory manager, also had a dotted relationship inside the organization. Then there was a sponsor of this entire project who was known to the coach personally. So there was a personal relationship there. Then there was an HR role that was being played there, which had some investment in the whole project. And so this was all so messy and it was all so mixed up that this person was only looking at it from a coaching perspective, but not looking at what might be some ethical considerations that might come up in the different relationships that are being played out in this coaching journey, where there are so many players and so many relationships between them, and how are all of them impacting each other, and could there be some ethical considerations? So these are kind of questions that get asked. These are kind of scenarios that get explored together, and then we see what can be some learning out of it, which can be used for future. So normative is about following norms, about following guidelines, about following rules, and particularly ethical violations. You also can bring, I remember there was one case where the supervisee talked about, described the coaching conversation, and in that description, what came out was that there is a very clear case of the client needing perhaps some other kind of intervention and not coaching, more like therapy or counseling. And the coach had not caught it, had not identified that. So we went over the conversation and we looked at, is there a possibility over here? How would you deal with it if it does so happen? How would you, talk to your client about it, and so on? And how in future you will look for cues which will tell you that there is perhaps overlap of boundaries that is happening over here, or possibility of an overlap of boundaries that might be happening over here. So that's your normative function. Then, of course, you have a formative function where you want to continue to develop as a coach, where all these questions get addressed. Am I a good enough coach? What more do I need to build capacity? What more do I need to build capability? How do I not take accountability for my clients' success or failure, and so on? And just to share with you a brilliant piece of my story from me as a coach. Now, supervision is about developing the coach in the context of their practice. So when we talk about coaching practice, there are other dimensions that we need to include, which is stakeholders, which is discovery meetings, chemistry meetings. Is there chemistry between the coach and client? Is there compatibility between coach and client, and so on? How are the stakeholders involved in this? What are their relationships, and so on? So the topic that I had brought to supervision was, and this had been puzzling me for a while, saying, I know how to handle clients, I do coaching well, and so on. But somewhere, I'm having a difficulty converting chemistry sessions into actual coaching engagements. And my success rate is very low. I have so many chemistry sessions, both corporate clients, personal clients, known clients, unknown clients, all kinds. But they getting converted into actual coaching clients for me, that is a very small, the percentage is very small, and I'm not happy with it. I want to see how to improve on that. And during supervision, I understood something which was such a phenomenal insight for me. So what I do is, the way I am normally is, I'm very open, I'm very vulnerable, I'm very authentic, I'm very transparent. That's who I am. Now, and I believe that this is the way to be, and this is what works, and this is the right way to be. So no other possibility existed for me. During supervision, I thought, oh my God, is there a flip side to this? Is it possible that my openness, my transparency, my vulnerability actually puts the other person off, scares them? They find it intimidating. Is that possible? I've never looked at it that way. I thought, yeah, I mean, if I'm open, transparent, vulnerable, it'll encourage you to be the same. And that's how you will open up. And then we will build trust and safety amongst us and so on. But what if it actually puts them off? What if they're scared that this will be my expectation from them, to be open, to be vulnerable, to be transparent? And what if that is not something they're comfortable with? So initially, when I got this insight, I rejected it. I said, yeah, so, okay, fine. I understood. Yeah, that's a possibility. But then I don't want to change. Then, okay, if clients are not happening because of that, I'm fine. Then I said, hello, but hold on, how about just experimenting with it? Instead of moving from one extreme to the other extreme, how about me achieving moderation? That, let me try it out, how it works. I got 2 conversions immediately after I decided to try it out. Now, I don't know if you can say this attribution error. I don't know if it was because of this, but I felt good, that I have seen some other angle which was diametrically opposite to mine. It's like you're looking ahead and you can't see your shadow, right? It was somewhat like that for me. And then I'm willing to be flexible. I'm willing to be open to experiment. And this happened so recently, and this happened after so many years of coaching and after so much of experience, that I was like, wow. It doesn't matter whether you're a beginner coach or it doesn't matter whether you're an experienced coach. This space is possibilities for all. So that is how formative worked for me. So how does all this happen? Let me take you a little bit through the process now. Now that we have seen what it is, we have seen what people bring to supervision, we have seen the functions of supervision and some use cases. Let's look at what is this framework of supervision that we operate with them. Like we have the ICF framework for coaching, we have a supervision framework for supervision. So what we use is, we use the 7-eyed model of coaching supervision that was put together by Peter Hawkins. And this 7-eyed model basically talks about 7 eyes or 7 lenses through which we are examining information and data for us to make sense out of it, for us to make meaning out of it, so that we can look at new possibilities. So if you look at it, the first I is the client. So we look at, what is this client? Who is this client? What is their situation? What do they want? How did they arrive into the session? What went on during the session? Where are they coming from? What is their ecosystem? And so on. So that is what we look at when we look at the client. Then the second I is the relationship between or the interventions that the coach uses with the client. So what tools are you using? What techniques are you using? Are they serving? Basically, the idea is to see, is there a gap somewhere? So these are all ways of diagnostic tools, so to say, where we are examining different relationships through different lenses. Then the third I is the relationship between the coach and the client. What is the relationship between you two? Who is the client for you? Who does the client remind you of? Who do you become for the client? How does the client see you? How do you see the client? So that's the relationship between the coach and the client. Then the fourth I is the coach. What's going on for you? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your emotions now in the coaching session, and so on? The fifth I is the relationship between the coach and the supervisor. As we are processing the case in this room, what is going on between us? Who are we for each other? Who are you looking at me as? Who am I looking at you as? So that's the relationship between us two. Sixth is what is going on for the supervisor. While I'm sitting in the room over here with you, and while you're describing your case to me, and you're sharing about your emotions with me, let's say it is a restorative case, what's happening to me? What am I feeling? So let us say the coach has not said that they're getting bored, but let us say that while the coach is describing the situation to me as a supervisor, I start feeling very bored. And then I bring that into the conversation and I say, you know what, as you're talking to me, I'm suddenly feeling extreme amount of boredom, and I'm wondering if that's what happens to you when you're in a session with your client. Now, this gives access to the coach to examine really if this is what is happening between us. Is it possible this is happening between me and my client? Then what might that mean? And why is that happening? So it gives more data for us to process. And the last I is the overall ecosystem. So that is the seventh I, where we are taking it outside. And that is why, by the way, we say supervision, super hyphenated vision, because we are looking at going beyond what we see, going away from it, and taking a perspective to see what do we notice, because more details are visible only after you after you step away a bit, right? Then you get to see things more clearly, not while you're in it. So this is the framework that we use for our supervision. Inside this framework, with this 7 lenses in mind, all kinds of tools and techniques we use, which come from different schools of thought and from different bodies of knowledge. So just to show you some of them over here. So we use psychodynamic concepts, like we use parallel process, which I talked to you about just now, saying what is happening between me and you, is that what is happening between you and them? Is there a parallel going on over here? We talk about transference and counter transference, like for instance, there was this supervisor who came to me with a case saying, you know what, my client comes to me and I feel so much need to help this client, and I go beyond, I think, what is even needed or what is even good for the client. So I will message my client, are you okay? Are you doing this? How are you? And I don't get responses from my client. And I wonder, why is it that my client is not responding when I'm so much eager to help? So we looked at transference, and then my supervisor realized that, oh my God, actually what is happening is that this client situation is reminding me of my child, and who this client becomes for me in my supervision relationship with my client is my child. So I'm not seeing the client as my client. I'm seeing the client as, this person is not sitting here, somebody else is sitting here. And that is what drives my behavior. So how do I detach myself from that, right? How do I tell myself, this is not my child, this is somebody else, and I am not the mother. So how do I de-link my role as a mother from my role as a coach when they're all getting mixed up? Then we look at idealization, projection, competition, where we look at Am I projecting myself on you, that just because I think of it in a certain way, am I expecting you also to think the same way? Or just because I feel in a certain way, you should also feel the same way. And then we look at different technologies. We look at transactional analysis, for instance, where we look at ego states and we look at discounting. For instance, my supervisor realized that this tendency to constantly want to help is actually discounting the other person's capabilities. So somewhere in my head, I'm saying, I am the rescuer. I can help you. You can't help yourself. So I need to help you. But does that really serve your client? Does that help your client to become an individuated person, to help them maximize their potential? Or does that make them dependent on you? You know, so that is what we examine. And now here what happens is, if you're playing the parent, for instance, and if your client is also in a need, then they might just become a victim in that triangle, and they might become this child, and you're constantly in this symbiotic relationship of, I'll help you, you depend on me. I'll help you, you depend on me. And that makes me wonder oftentimes, that for coaches who have clients for years on end, how come they are still with you? It's a question I have. How come they have not become independent? So what is this dependency relationship? All this we examine during supervision very beautifully within that framework of relationships. And by doing all of that, and by bringing their concerns, challenges, and all of those, and then going through this whole process using the framework in a systematic manner, what benefits then can the coach get from supervision? Or can you get from supervision? So you will expand your coaching style. First of all, my coaching style changed after I became a supervisor and after I went through supervision. I realized that I'm limiting myself and I'm not bringing my whole self to the conversation by making certain assumptions of what will work and what will not work for my clients based on no data, absolutely no evidence, simply some limitation of mine. So I expand that and I expand my coaching style. Of course, we work through ethical issues so that, we become more prepared, we become more cautious. Developing reflective practice. I feel this is an extremely useful benefit for a coach, because this is what will lead finally the coach to become supervise themselves so that they become independent of a supervisor. I have developed this reflective practice and I have gone through supervision and I have learned how to do reflection and how to make sense out of reflection slowly by myself. And that's what is going to be useful for me in future. Of course, we saw how emotional balance is so important, where you don't even know that we are emotionally disturbed till we come to supervision and, till we nail something somewhere. And then that makes us realize that actually what is going on is that I have not been, somewhere my balance is lost. Self-knowledge, like coaching, a lot of self-knowledge, a lot of realizations, a lot of insights, especially getting in touch with our own biases and how they might show up. We talk about clients and their biases, but as a coach, what are my biases? As a coach, what are my filters? As a coach, how do I see myself? So while I'm expecting my client to show up in a certain way, am I showing up that way? So we talk about not judging our clients, but am I judging myself? So am I sitting there judging myself while saying that, I'm holding you in a not judgmental space, but I'm fully judgmental of myself? How does that work? And how does that serve the client? And you go away with an expanded toolkit, which you can use in your coaching sessions, right? I mean, you actually, by going through supervision, you learn how all these tools which I talked about, all these concepts which I talked about, how do they work? And then you take them away and then you start using them in your own coaching journey, and that benefits your client. And more than benefiting your client, when your client sees how you have shifted, they shift. And when they shift, their ecosystem realizes how they have shifted, and that impacts the ecosystem. We also come into supervision when the coach comes into supervision, for instance, saying, you know what, session to session, my client keeps saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then they don't end up taking actions. And that after a while, I start getting irritated, that you're not committed to yourself. You don't want to take actions. In a coaching session, we don't go beyond that. But in supervision, we widen the lens, make it wider, and we look at what could be the possible reasons why the client is not taking actions. Is it about the client or is it about their environment? There was a case where once, the coach wanted to, the coach was restricting himself in his growth, saying, I'm happy where I am. I'm doing my job well. My organization recognizes me, rewards me, respects me. And what is the need to grow? That was actually a very interesting question, because if you don't want to grow, then why should you grow? But you still want to come for coaching. So then when the coach brought this to supervision, we looked at where is this person working and what is the organization culture like? Do they promote growth? Do they promote initiative? Do they promote going beyond what you're already doing? Or is the organization itself fine where they are? Now, if that is the environment in which this person is operating, how will they design and take actions which are making them expand? They'll get a pushback from the organization, say, isn't it? So then the alternative for them will be to quit. So then how will that impact the organization and so on? So this could happen, or for instance, let us say that your client came into the session saying, I want to be very assertive. I feel that everyone has taken me for a ride, have walked all over me. I have been a doormat and all that. Now I have to learn to say no. And I'm going to say no. And then they go back and then, they come back saying they have not done it. So then you examine in supervision, what might have happened? All right. So they tried saying no in their family. They got a pushback. Why? Because the family thought this person was such a nice person all these days, so accommodating, so, willing to help, never said no, such a nice person. What has happened to this person now? We don't like this person. We don't want this person. Now, when there is a pushback from the family, what happens to the client? The client says, is it really worth so much? I mean, is it really so important for me to be assertive at the cost of my relationships? No. So I'll not take actions. But now how do I tell my coach I have not taken actions? I'm a nice person, right? How do I tell my coach I have not taken actions? What will my coach think and say about me? So this whole, dilemma is going on for the client, poor thing. And we are oblivious to it. We are not even looking at it. And we are simply hammering the client saying, oh, you're not committed. Tell me by when you will do it, how you will do it, and all that. So then the coach goes back with more knowledge about how to make it expansive and how to make sure that, they include a little bit of the system and they give the benefit of doubt to the client, saying it may not be because of the client's capability and will, it may be because of their environment. So all these ways make the coach grow in their practice and gives benefit to them and their clients. So if we will say that if supervision is so great and so fantastic and all that, why is it that coaches are not availing of supervision? This is my distress I'm bringing over here, because as a newly minted coach supervisor, I'm so excited about supervision and I'm so wanting coaches to come for supervision. They're not coming. So then what are they talking about? Why are they not coming? For me, the most important point is the last one. And I'm wondering if that is why they don't come, because they don't know what is supervision. They don't know how it will benefit them. They don't know how it will be useful for them. So I'm not saying that everybody needs a coach supervisor. I'm saying, will everyone benefit from supervision? Definitely. Do you need it? No. Is it mandatory? No. Having said that, for certain accreditations now and for certain credentials now, supervision is becoming mandatory. So ICF has now, for ACTC, the advanced certification in team coaching, right? So if you're applying for ACTC, you need to have mandatorily gone through supervision. And they specify a number of hours of supervision or number of sessions of supervision also, which you should have gone through. So it's slowly becoming mandatory. EMCC has already made it mandatory for credentials. Senior practitioner, master practitioner, you need to have been supervised. Team coach practitioner, you need to have been supervised. So it's already mandatory. But is that when people will come in for supervision, when it becomes mandatory? I don't. Do you have a fear of seeming incompetent, weak, not good enough, not strong enough in front of your supervisor? Is that why you're not coming? Or are you saying, I don't have enough clients? That could be a valid reason. I don't have enough clients, so I don't have enough coaching experience. So what will I bring to supervision and how will it help me? That could be. But consider that if you did go for supervision, maybe something will happen for you like it happened for me. You'll have a breakthrough and maybe your clients will increase. And then you will do more coaching sessions. Very busy is not a acceptable reason at all. If you're not very busy coaching, very busy to coach, how come you're very busy to be supervised? And you don't need to be supervised at the same rate at which you coach. For number of hours of coaching, 1 hour of supervision. You can also bring patterns. So many of my supervisors have brought patterns to supervision, saying, I have noticed over so many coaching sessions that certain type of clients I'm not able to deal with, or certain situations I get flustered, or emotions is something I'm not able to handle when my clients bring in emotions into the sessions. So then we examine that pattern, saying, what is that pattern saying? And that's useful, right? You need to tell me right or wrong, of course. So I guess that's all I have. Over to you.
What a wonderful presentation, Rekha. Muchísimas gracias. Para nuestros participantes en Colombia, pueden poner sus preguntas en el chat y vamos a traducirlas en tiempo real. We'll be translating some of the questions so that other members who are in Colombia also are aware of what participants are asking in English.
You want me to take the question asked in English first?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Okay, so nothing is out of scope over here. So Ajit is saying, if I may ask a question, would you mind sharing some with regards to what and how of becoming a coach supervisor? Oh, okay. So very quickly, I'll tell you, Ajit, I went through a coach supervision program offered by Dr. Damian Goldbach. It was a 9-month, and 9-month, I don't know whether it's coincidence or what, but it was a 9-month, extremely rigorous, intensive program, 36 weeks, not a single gap, week on week program in which we had to do a lot of work, including a lot of supervision, a lot of practice sessions, etc. So that is the program that I did. I think it was extremely useful. One, side effect of this program was, and I think it's an extremely beneficial side effect of this program, was that it put me in touch with very interesting people. And now we have a cohort. We continue our practice. We finished our program in November, but we continue meeting once a month. We do group supervision once a month. We do triad supervision once a month. And all this is inspired by our supervisor who has been doing this with the triad for the last 5 years. And it is so useful because all our supervision requirements are met while learning within this cohort. So this was a side benefit. I don't know if Ajit, that answered your question, but yeah. Formative experience from supervision, if you can share, what different experiment did you do? Okay. So 2 things I did. One, I was a bit flexible because when the potential client asked me what my experiences were in corporate life, I shared them, which I may not have normally done or may not have done it so extensively. The other thing which I did was, which was moderation, was I didn't share everything about myself like I normally do. So I just shared enough. Then I looked at what the other client wanted to say. Then I shared, then what the client wanted to say, and so on. So that kind of, I feel that kind of made the client feel safe and not overwhelmed with so much of gush happening on the other side. So I think these are the two things which gave me the results. Okay.
We have a question from Rani. She has her hand lifted.
Thank you. Thanks, Santiago. So Rekha, can you please repeat from where you did the program, please? I didn't get the name.
I did it with Dr. Damien Goldwag.
Dr. Damien.
I'll just
Thank
put
you.
it here.
I have a question, Rekha.
Yes.
So if I was to have a coach and a supervisor, should I keep my dilemmas about my coaching practice for my supervisor and other personal aspects for my coach? Or what would you suggest?
That's a lovely question. So what happens is that even though you don't bring your personal quote unquote dilemmas to supervision directly, right? You will normally bring a coaching case to supervision or a pattern to supervision, but it will be very specific. And normally there'll be a question that we will be exploring. What happens is that during this exploration and during this inquiry, because we use so many methods, right? A whole lot of stuff about yourself comes up and a whole lot of things about yourself you get aware of. And that is equivalent to you going for the same purpose to a coach. So even if that was not the intention, that is the outcome that you get. So I would say that therefore it is, it's like a superset. So you get that plus. Supervision is also many times directive in nature, or you do some amount of training, you can do some amount of teaching, you can do some amount of direction over there, like this is not a good practice, or that is not a good practice, or try this or try that, you know, which is not available in coaching. Does that answer your question?
Beautiful. Yes. Para nuestros participantes en Colombia, quieren hacer una última pregunta antes de que hagamos el cierre de la sesión. Rekha, one of the questions that we try to bring as a theme to our different guests is there anything you wish you had known back at the early days in your coaching journey about what to expect of the industry, of engaging with clients, of your own self-discovery? Anything comes to mind?
As a coach?
Yes.
Very interesting, very lovely question. So I didn't have a good start as a coach. I had a very rough start as a coach. Yeah. And why I had a rough start, I think one of the reasons is because I came in with an assumption that all my past, whatever I have done in my past, should stand credit for me, and that I should get coaching assignments on the basis of that automatically, which means that I don't need to put myself out there. I don't need to become visible out there as a coach. You should come to me just like that. Now that was a very hard way of learning that it doesn't work like that. You're on a new journey. You are building new capabilities and you are assuming a new identity. So with that identity, now you need to make yourself visible. So I don't know if I had known that, but if I had had that sense earlier, I think it would have been better earlier. But it was not nice to know that.
We have one last question from REKHA.
Yes.
What would be your recommendation for how long of coaching experience should we have a supervision session? After how long of coaching experience should we have a supervision session?
So I would say that you should be a practicing coach, right? Which means that you should be doing coaching regularly. So for instance, if you have acquired a credential so that it takes you further in your career, in your organization, but you're not really using your credential to do coaching actively, then supervision may not be useful for you because you have nothing to bring to supervision. So ENCC mandates for supervisors that, or for senior practitioners for that matter, that every quarter you should have had one supervision session. So that is one way of looking at how often. Another is number of hours of coaching. So if you are an intense coach and do significant amount of practice, then I would say after every 10 to 15 coaching sessions, it's useful to have one supervision session. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, Betsy, I think we can close out the session. Any final words from the chapter?
Thank you so much, Santiago. And thank you, Rekha. It's a pleasure to have you here today. It's good to know that we are not alone in our practice. We used to have a lot of concerns, and hopefully we have now supervision in order for us to solve all those concerns. You are more than welcome anytime here in Colombia through Zoom or face-to-face. Y a todos los que se conectaron, muchísimas gracias. Los que se conectaron desde Colombia, esta grabación va a estar disponible en nuestro canal de YouTube en breve. Y all our guests from India and from all over the cities that we have here today, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm pretty sure that we are going to keep connecting. Thank you, Rekha. Thank you so much.
So let me say it. I've been learning this word, so I need to say it. Gracias.
Thank you all. Thank you, Santiago. Gracias a todos por acompañarnos hoy.